Hello again, back with another video. Basically, I made a statement claiming that you shouldn't be eating wild salmon because it's a critically endangered species, which a lot of people disagreed with. They think you should eat it. It was different to farm salmon, which personally I believe you should be eating neither. People were saying you're either one or the other. If you're not eating wild salmon, you're eating farm salmon. If you're not eating farm salmon, you're eating wild salmon. Basically, it's not that simple. I would full-heartedly believe that you shouldn't be eating any salmon for the points that I'm about to mention. Basically, a lot of people got in the comments in the last video, they honed in on the statement that I made about the wild farm salmon thing. They didn't actually care about the other points that I made, which were, addressing critically endangered species as well as poaching and stuff like that there. They didn't care very much for that. So their priorities weren't really there about protecting salmon in the first place. They just insist on eating a critically endangered species, which, kind of pull them out from under the rocks and expose themselves, really, that they don't really care about fishing stocks and that sort of thing. So fair play to you for doing that to yourselves. The second thing, I don't think anyone should be eating wild salmon. It's the simple fact that it's critically endangered. If you're eating all the wild salmon, which is endangered anyway, you'll eat the species into extinction. And we don't want that to happen since we are a salmon fishing community. We don't want to lose the one species that gives us so much joy and sport in the terms of angling. I don't think anyone should be eating farm salmon either. You might think that you're doing the world a favour by, if you're not eating the wild salmon, you're eating something that's, bred in captivity and eating something that isn't going to have an effect on salmon stocks and stuff like that there, because it's in a farm and it was produced in a farm and all that sort of jazz. But I'll explain how that absolutely is having an impact on salmon stocks and stuff like that there. So let's get into it. So basically, why I think you shouldn't be eating farm salmon. For the first point, farm salmon isn't even the same fish as a wild salmon. First and foremost, it's a different fish. It's bred in captivity. It doesn't have the natural environment to thrive like a wild salmon. It's fed pellets. It's living in a man-made environment, which has detrimental impact to the salmon itself as well as its nutritional value. Dietitianally, is that even a word? In terms of your diet, farm salmon actually has a very higher fat content than wild salmon, just because it's not a leaner meat source, because it's fed pellets and not active as much as a wild salmon. Is sitting around in its cage and stuff like that there. It's just getting force-fed pellets, which is bad for the salmon and bad for your own heart health as well, due to the higher fat content. As well as that, farm salmon is actually not pink. Dun dun dun, shocking, I know. Farm salmon flesh is grey. I just want to start that now. It's because of the food it's fed. Farm salmon is grey flesh, and then they dye it that nice pink salmony colour then in factories and labs to give it that, authentic salmon look. It's not even the same flesh, so you're eating a grey fish that's marketed and sold as something that's actually like more natural and authentic looking, but it is completely unnatural. If that didn't put you off, the grey farm salmon that you'll be eating, which is dyed pink, a lot of that dye that is in the salmon flesh is actually very bad for you. The dye, as well as the antibiotics that is fed to farm salmon, actually contributes to causations of cancer within consuming. A lot of studies have been proven to show that eating too much farm salmon actually causes cancers within humans. So, but it's like anything. I'm not here to tell you what to put into your body and what not to put into your body. Like a lot of other things cause cancer, but farm salmon definitely does. So, people still drink, people still smoke. That's your decision, but it's just, you might know the facts because of one thing or another. It's all capitalism. They wouldn't want you to know the bad things about eating salmon. It'd be marketed as something that's very healthy, as opposed to how it's actually detrimental. Not detrimental, it's actually quite bad for your health, but it's marketed as like a super health food. The next thing then is the salmon's own environment. Salmon are living in cages which are overpopulated. They're fed the pellets from fish feeds, so you think you're doing the environment a favour by including farm salmon into your diet. You're actually highly impacting fish stocks doing that in other species, because to feed salmon, they're made pellets from other species of fish. To produce 1 kilo of salmon in a farm, you need to feed it 1.2 kilograms of fish feed, or the pellets that they're fed, which is predominantly made up of dried fish meal and fish oil. So to produce salmon feed, to produce salmon, you're actually feeding it a lot of fish that was, in terms of fish food, that was, you know, made from catching fish to produce the fish feed, which you're feeding the salmon. As well as that, it's like a concentration camp for where salmon go to die a lot of the times. Well, salmon cages and fish farms actually have a 50% mortality rate, which nobody talks about. While they're living in them cramped conditions, they are subject to many really bad diseases. Just a few lovely diseases that they're subjected to, just off the top of my head, include lice infestation, Almenia, heart disease, chlamydia, and you're doing the world a favour by eating, but then you're producing all this salmon, which is like a genetic monstrosity that's going around diseased, that's like living in cramped, you know, we're a fishing community, but I know we're not on animal welfare, but you know, that's something that would put you off eating the farm salmon as well. As well as that, the amount of waste that salmon farms produce as well, like, it's terrible. I don't have the exact figures myself, but I'll get them. They produce a vast amount of waste all over the world, not just Ireland, not just anywhere else, but all over Scotland, Norway, Scandinavia. The amount of waste that a salmon farm produces is diabolical, which does impact, you know, clear waterways, rivers, stuff like that there that get into this waste would get into waterways and river systems as well from the salmon farms, which is, you know, really bad for other species to thrive in a aquatic environment. That's, you know, another thing that's bad with the salmon farms. The main thing on why salmon farms are bad as well is they actually dilute the gene pool of actual real wild salmon. More often than not, why farm salmon escape from fish farms and make their ways into natural waterways and up river systems and into lakes, rivers and streams. And once they escape, you're thinking, oh, that's good, there's more salmon for the angler to catch. That's absolutely not the case. They actually interbreed with wild salmon, causing the you know, genetic monstrosities, making the gene pool very dilute for actual wild salmon to thrive. So if you have a cock farm salmon that breeds with a wild hen salmon, you're going to produce like another species of salmon that isn't capable of mass producing salmon eggs down the line, which, you know, that hen has bred and laid its eggs. So that's you're really stopping two healthy wild salmon from producing, which is, you know, is why salmon come up the rivers to spawn. So yeah, it's really detrimental in terms of salmon stocks due to interbreeding with wild salmon as well. So that's another thing that needs to be addressed. Another thing as well, like, I don't know what they do around the world, but in Lough Swilly in Donegal itself, and even Mulroy Bay, where they have a lot of salmon farms, they actually have such a bad lice infestation disease there. They would actually take other species of, like, they would introduce unnatural species into these areas to clean up the lice problem. Like, if ballan wrasse were taken from the ocean to put into these salmon farms to clean up the lice infestation problem, like, that's all well and good, but how far do you let this go before you interfere with Mother Nature doing its actual thing? You know, you're man-made, creating a solution that, you know, a problem which was man-made as well, from taking a wild resource from elsewhere, which, like, I'm not a marine biologist, I don't know the ins and outs, but that doesn't sit right with a lot of people. As well as that, them fish that were stolen from one area, contributing to that ecosystem, are now in another area that were, like, they were artificially put there, which is going to, you know, affect the shoreline and where they once were. Another thing as well, the corporate capitalism and greed will one day, I've talked about this before and people still don't think that I am for farm salmon, which I'm entirely not, for the points mentioned before, but corporate greed and capitalism will one day wipe out salmon species entirely. There's a company there, Moe, which is Marine Harvest, formerly known as Marine Harvest, which is big in Ireland, big in Scotland, Scandinavia as well. They actually contribute a lot to Irish economy. They provide 300 jobs in Ireland alone. They provide thousands of jobs worldwide. But, you know, the corporate greed at the effects of salmon, in 2024 they've achieved records profits at the expense of raping oceans and ecociding riverways and stuff like that there. that's just what you're up against. You're up against corporate greed and capitalism while you're fighting for a fish that, you know, people don't care. It's the same everywhere. Like environmental issues take the bottom line when there's money to be made. How I think, personally, what I would like to see done, I don't think, like people have tried protests and stuff like this here. If you're contributing so much in terms of profiteering and job creation for the job market in a country, I don't think the government will care too much about your environmental issues. I think people protesting these corporate companies are, you know, it's like a David and Goliath situation. You're not going to win that battle. Personally, what I would push for everyone to do, basically, I would just not eat farm salmon. Just point blank, don't eat it. Don't eat supermarket salmon. Don't even order salmon in a restaurant. You know, the fat content's too high. It causes cancer. It's pumped up with antibiotics. Suffers from diseases, but as well as that, it actually, due to pollution and diluting the gene pool, it really does affect wild salmon stocks, which, you know, is what we're all about. We're here to save the salmon, and one day, hopefully, but I can't see it. I can't see salmon making a comeback the way it was before all these multinational eco-siding companies came into the picture. Oh, as well, don't eat your wild salmon because they're critically endangered anyway. If you're, like, I know you're allowed to, in certain riverways, you're allowed to get your blue tag or your brown tag or whatever it is, 3 a year. I think you're down to now. I just release them. People argue the catch and release doesn't work, but if you're sitting killing a fish that's endangered anyway, it's probably best that you don't kill it. I know there's everything that goes against the angler's favour within fishing, such as, you know, fish farms and poaching, which I've covered in another video. Be sure to check that one out. Poaching, and then just anglers bending the rules, keeping fish. That doesn't really help matters. So release your fish. Don't eat wild salmon. Subscribe to me for more. If you have anything to add in the comments, be sure to let me know. We'll get back to you and I'll make a video on that. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll get these salmon eco-siders out of Ireland, which